Kilobyte here. So I was making the Bluebird house and making the video on making the Bluebird house, and as I was preparing for it, it occurred to me that I need to do a video on caring for bluebirds, because if you just get a bluebird house and you don't understand the caring of bluebirds, then you're going to end up being unhappy, because bad things are going to happen with your bluebirds most likely. The bluebirds are a native species to America, and their numbers have greatly declined, or had greatly declined over the years, because of non-native aggressive species such as the house sparrow and even the starling. The house sparrow and the bluebird directly compete for housing, and the European starling will kill them, and wipe out their nest whenever possible. So, purple martins are facing the same thing, which I've also got, but this one's about bluebirds. Recently the numbers have increased because of people like you and me who have got bluebird houses up or are putting them up, and so that's a good thing. Bluebirds are a protected species in America. You cannot legally kill a bluebird. It's protected under federal law. House sparrows and starlings, these are birds from Europe. They are not native. They are not protected. And in fact, you can dispatch these birds any time of year federally. Check any local laws that you may have. Why do I mention that? The first year we put up 2 bluebird houses, and they're in the backyard, and we got a pair of bluebirds in one, and we got a pair of sparrows in the other. And we're thinking, oh, nice, we got 2 pairs in our 2 houses. It's awesome. Well, that was short-lived, because, as I said, one was a pair of sparrows, as in house sparrows, European house sparrows. Both pair made nests, laid eggs, had hatchlings, and one Sunday morning I noticed a lot of activity in the backyard where the houses were, but didn't really pay that much attention or know what was going on. Later that day, I saw some house sparrows going in and out of the bluebird house, and the one with bluebirds in it, and I was like, what? So I went and go and look, and I found the reason. I found what happened. There was the house sparrows had started making a nest right on top of the bluebird nest. Now you may be asking, what about the bluebirds and the babies? Well, the babies were still there, buried under the messy house sparrow nest, but they had their heads pecked in by the house sparrows. Yeah, that was a sight. I can still picture it today, over 10 years later. So that is why I'm making this video on caring for bluebirds. You don't want that to happen to you. And when you hear me later in this video talking about house sparrows, just bear that in mind, that these are not a native bird. They are in fact responsible for the great decline in the bluebird population, and they are vicious. They will kill without thought. They're not, they are aggressive. So keep that in mind. Let me just say here that if all you want is a pretty house to have in your yard or in your garden, find one you like, build one you like, paint it up. That is awesome. But do me a favor and cover the hole, close the hole. However you want to do it, put something over the hole somehow so that birds can't actually get in and use it. Because if you're not going to make the effort to maintain the house and take the actions necessary for bluebirds to actually use it, then house sparrows will use it, and we'll end up with more house sparrows. So just cover the hole, and you'll be fine. You can enjoy the house. It'll be awesome for you. Let's talk about some general information on the bluebirds. Bluebirds will lay 1 egg a day until it's finished laying for that clutch. The first clutch around here, at least Tennessee area, is usually 5 eggs. The second clutch will be 4 eggs, and the third clutch, if there is a third clutch, will be 3 eggs. It's good practice to make a note on your calendar or something when eggs were laid, the dates when eggs were laid, how many days, on this date we had this many eggs, something like that, so you keep track. When they hatched, and then also when they fledged. If you keep that information, you record it, you can look back, over the next few years and say, okay, they fledged on this date, then they'll probably be back around this date for the next clutch. The incubation period for eastern bluebirds is 13 to 14 days. That's the time from when the eggs are laid to the time they start hatching. The babies fledge about 17 to 21 days after hatching. There's 17 to 21 days, so you can't tell for sure. It varies with the clutch. Do not open the nest box after the babies are 13 days old. So after they've hatched, you've marked on your calendar, know when 13 days are. After 13 days, don't open the house. Otherwise, some of them may try to leave the house because they can, the babies can get worked up, and they may try to leave the nest, and they can't fly, so they will die. If one does fall out or jumps out, however, and it can't fly, you can put it back in. That's not going to hurt it to put it back in. And those stories about the mother not feeding it, that's not true. What you may have to do though is some of them will just keep trying to jump because they're still freaked out. So you may have to take a sock or something and just cover the hole for short period of time, maybe an hour at the most, and that should give it enough time to calm down. I will say this, western and mountain bluebirds, the time that I've mentioned here might be a few days different. They tend to, I think it's the western, I forget which, western or mountain are slightly bigger, so they may take a day or two longer. And let me mention, as far as the handling of birds, be sure to wear gloves. I would recommend wearing gloves, even a mask, one of those dust masks, and be sure not to touch your face while you're out there with the gloves, and wash your hands. Birds are dirty, so bear that in mind. So let's talk about house requirements. If you've seen my video on building the bluebird house, you've got some idea on how it should look and some features it should have. The type of wood can vary, but don't use treated wood. Also, don't paint the inside of the house. If you do paint the outside, which is fine, don't use a dark color. It'll be hotter. You know how a dark car is hotter than a light car in the sun, all that stuff. You don't want to cook the birds, so don't paint it black. A light color will be much cooler for the birds. Some used to say, and may still do, that you need a 4-inch floor. I totally disagree with that. The bluebirds, if a bluebird pair lays 5 eggs and you got a 4-inch floor, and I say this from experience, they will not fit. They will not fit. And I say 4-inch floor at the level of which the nest is, which is a couple inches from the floor. It needs to be at least, it needs to be 4.5 minimum inches square. I say this because I had a 4-inch, I was following somebody's plan, and they had a 4-inch floor, and the Bluebirds laid 5 eggs and had 5 babies in there, and there just flat out wasn't room. One got kicked out, and needless to say, it was dead because there just was not room for all of them. So 4.5 to 5.5 inch floor is what I recommend. On mine, it's actually a 5.5 inch floor. It does 5.5 inch floor is not too big. It works fine. I've had the house I'm replacing with this house I'm building in this other video has a 5.5 inch floor. It's the same model. I've had it for 10 years, and it has had Bluebirds every year. Let's see. The floor should be between 5 inches and 8 inches below the entry hole. So it's between 5 and 8 inches below the entry hole. That way, predators are reaching in the hole. They can't reach down far enough to reach them. At the same time, it's not too low where the babies can't get up. The hole itself should be 1.5 inches in diameter. 1.5 inches in diameter. No bigger, no smaller. I've seen some places where they talk about having a slit and this kind of thing, and I don't. I use a 1.5 inch round hole. Starlings can't fit in it, and house sparrows are going to get in my opinion, with any of them. So you got to deal with them differently. Air ventilation at the top of the walls, especially if you're in a hot location. You want to have some air so it'll flow from one side to the other of the house, and that'll pull the heat, because heat rises. That'll pull the heat out, and they won't cook in the house. It's just like dark color. Put some holes in the floor so that any water or moisture can leave, and also air can come up and keep the bottom of the nest dry. You want to keep that dry. Alright, so one of the important things in a Bluebird house is you got to be able to get into it. Because of the old nests, and if and when house sparrows get in there and build their nests, you want to get rid of them, the nest and the birds if you can. And that will happen, guaranteed. So I do on this particular house that I did, it's a front flip opening, and I would show it to you, but it's actually mounted already. The front flips up, and that gives you full access into the house, and you can just reach in with gloves and just pull the old nest out if it's a house sparrow. And by the way, house sparrow nests are big, messy things. There'll be stuff sticking out of the hole. A Bluebird nest is a very neat circular nest at the bottom of the house. We'll get into the whole house sparrow thing here in a little bit. You can do it on front or sides. Some people say you can do it on top. I guess you could reach in and pull the nest out. It doesn't work well. Don't do it. Excuse me. The roof should overhang the house some. Really, this is mostly to keep water out. Some people say that it helps keeping predators from standing on top and reaching in. Yeah, maybe. Around here, we've not had to deal with that. So I do have the roof overhang some. And also, one of the things I do is I will put, some houses will have just, this is the front, and they'll just drill the hole in, and that's it. So you've got a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch thick front board with a hole in it. I will double that. I'll take a smaller piece of wood with the 1.5 inch hole, line them up, and nail that or glue it or screw it onto the front. so that it's deeper, and that way it's harder for predators to reach in. And you'll find starlings will get on the house and they'll stick their heads in as far as they can, trying to reach something, and having that little extra depth of the entry, in my opinion, helps. Perches. You may see on some of these in stores, some of the more decorative stores, maybe Hobby Lobby or something like that. They'll have Bluebird houses, and they'll have a perch. They may also be really small, but anyway, don't ever put a perch on a Bluebird house. Bluebirds do not use a perch. The only thing that will use a perch is an enemy bird. A house sparrow may set out there, a starling set out there on the perch, and just wait for the bluebird to try to get out. So don't ever use a perch. Mounting the house. Alright, so we've made the house, now you got to mount it on something. A metal pole is the best, it's the preferred solution for that. Be it, you can get an actual pole that's made for a birdhouse, you can get electrical, you got the electrical, metal electrical conduit, as well as water pipe. You can use any of that. You can also use a wooden post, like a 4x4 or something. I'd suggest on that you might want that to be treated so it'll last a little longer. And that won't hurt the birds because they're not living. The bird back of the house will keep the treated part away, so you won't have any problems with that. I put grease on mine about 6 inches below the house. I'll put grease around it for about 9 inches. That, people say it doesn't help. Well, I think it at least keeps bugs out. You can also use deer netting. Snakes, if you wrap deer netting around the post, snakes will not be able to get to the house. I will warn you though, they might get caught in the netting, so you may end up with a snake caught in your netting. Trees. You can mount a house on trees and it's fine. Bluebirds they'll still use it, but be aware that if you use a tree, that your snakes, cats, raccoons, bugs, they have easier access. And don't ever use a dead tree or a dying tree because those will always have bugs in them. But again, I've done it and had success with them on a tree. The entry, how high should you mount it? 4 to 6 feet off the ground. I usually do mine or just the entry hole just over 5 feet. The current one, I think I did like 5 feet 3 inches is where the entry hole is, and that way it's high enough, but yet when you open it, you can see you can look into the nest without too much problem. Sorry, I didn't mean to insult any little people. If you are too short to look at it, you can use a mirror. Hold a mirror up, and if you need to show it a flashlight or something to look down into the nest, you can. So technically 4 to 6 feet for the nest. I recommend 5 to 6 feet for the hole entry. They like the entrance to be on either the north or east side, somewhere in that quarter. It can be a little wider. It doesn't have to necessarily be in that 90 degrees, but it does need to be probably within 120 degrees of that total 120. You don't want the afternoon sun shining in the hole, or really on the front of the house if you can help it. And you don't want the wind to be going into the hole. The best time to mount a house, to put a house up, the best time for actually getting birds is going to be late winter, early spring, because that's when they're first showing up and getting ready to claim a house. So that's probably your best time. But at least here around Tennessee, even if you wait till June you still may get a pair. You may still get a late pair because they don't always pair up right at the beginning. And really, you can put the house up anytime you want. Worst thing is going to happen is it's going to wear some, and if it's like a cedar house, which is what I recommend, that when it wears, it actually gets a better look, in my opinion. Some other things to consider is, as far as the mounting, is the location. Bluebirds are territorial as far as in the season, the breeding season, I guess. So you don't want, they will not nest within 100 yards of each other. So if you are going to have multiple bluebird houses and want bluebirds in them, they need to be 100 yards or more apart. Don't put them in a bush. Don't put them in branches. They need to have a bit of an open area in front of them. I mean, it's not like it has to be a huge open area, but at least 10 feet front and preferably sides to be open. That way they've got an open area, so when they come out, they don't have to worry about getting jumped by something. You can have a cat lying in wait that'll jump out of a bush right as they fly by. Also, it helps if you have afternoon shade on the house. If it's in a hot location like here, it's pretty hot around here in the summer, then especially July and August, and so ours has late afternoon shade. And one other thing that is useful, you don't have to have it, but if there's a location for the babies to land when they first fledge, because they don't fly well, so what they will do is when they come out, they're going to look for something to land on that's not too far away. Probably within 100 feet, you want something, if you can, for them to aim at and try to land on. And again, it's not necessary, but it can help the birds. So we've talked about the birdhouse, location and all that, but there's the maintenance part. Having bluebirds, they're not true. They're not really your pets, but it's like having a pet. There are some responsibilities that you need to take if you want to be successful. One of those is you need to make weekly or twice a week house calls. You need to check the house at least once a week. The one exception is when the babies get to the 13-day after they've hatched, 13 days. I think that was right. After the 13th day, that's when you stop opening the house, so you don't want to check them. You can still check the house, but the post and the house itself, but don't open it. Check the nest at least, like I said, once a week. The things you want to track, like I said, the eggs, when eggs are laid, when the babies hatched, and when they fledged, if you can. Before I open the house, what I do is I'll go stand over kind of on the back side of the house, and I'll kind of tap on it, and I'll softly make some noise. I don't want to scare the babies, but I want the adults to fly out before I open it, because I don't want to risk them getting hurt trying to scramble out while I'm opening it. One of the things to look for is make sure the nest isn't wet. There are times when it might be damp, but you don't want it. It certainly shouldn't be wet, and it shouldn't be damp all the time. If it is, you need to put some more holes underneath. Look for signs of bugs, blowflies. If you've got those in your area, those can be a real problem. Wasp. Again, you can use a mirror if you need to. If you need to a little more height to see down into it. Check the pole or post, and the outside of the house for any scratch marks or anything to indicate that a predator's trying to get in. At the end of the season, so it's late fall, go ahead and clean out the old nest, and you can clean it out between clutches if you want. But bluebirds will reuse a nest. I've heard people say that every time they fledge, clean it out. You don't have to. Now, if it's real dirty, and this is a judgment call, if it's real dirty, then yes, you can clean it out. They will build a new nest, but they don't have to. So if it's not that bad, I leave mine, and that saves the bluebirds from having to build a new nest. Feeding, I don't feed my bluebirds. Bluebirds eat insects, crickets, grasshoppers. They'll eat mealworm, not earthworm, mealworm. And there are some people that feed them mealworm. There are some they'll eat specific types of berries, and you can actually buy specific types of suet. But again, I don't feed mine. You don't have to feed them. You'll still get bluebirds without feeding them. And they also get their water. They eat insects, so that's where they get their water. They get a lot of moisture from eating the insects. So I think we've covered most of the things directly with the bluebirds. Now in this section, let's talk about house sparrows. House sparrows are as we've already stated, a non-native bird. It's a bird that came over from Europe and pretty much just did huge damage to the bluebirds. You need to learn, if you want to be successful with bluebirds, if you want to be I hesitate to say it, but a responsible bluebird pet owner. They're not really pets, but they kind of end up being that way in the fact that there are responsibilities you need to assume when you put out the bluebird houses. One of them is dealing with house sparrows. The starlings can't get in the house. They'll be a real pest, but they can't get in the house, so they won't do that much damage. The house sparrows can, and they will kill the bluebirds. They will kill the baby bluebirds. They will not hesitate to do so. Learn to identify house sparrows. The males and the females, they look a little different. Learn to identify them. Learn to identify their nests. Learn to identify their eggs. House sparrow eggs are a nasty looking speckled thing. Bluebird egg is a pale blue. They can, when I say pale blue, they can be white. The coloring will vary a little bit. But a house sparrow egg is a speckled, ugly speckled thing. And yeah, I am a little biased, but I do not like house sparrows. And you won't either if you have to deal with them when it comes to bluebirds. So be able to identify their nests. They have a nasty, just disheveled nest. You'll have stuff sticking out of the house from the nest. It's a bluebird nest is really nice and well made, circular. A couple inches tall. Excuse me. The house sparrow nest will just be a bunch of twigs and grass and stuff that's just been pulled in, and it'll overflow the house. It will literally stick out the opening and the vent holes. They make a real mess. They're quite easy to tell. So be able to identify them. At the minimum, you need to remove any house sparrow nests that they make in the houses. Remove the nest, minimum, whether it's got eggs in them or not, remove them. And you'll probably have to do this several times because they're very persistent. What I do is I keep a second house. I have a second house that's 20, 30 feet away from my main house. And it's a good house, but it's a second one. It's not, the birds they prefer this the main house that I'm replacing with this one I just built. For whatever reason, this other house is built on the side of a tree. I don't know if that affects it, but anyway, that is what I call my bait house. And I call it my bait house because I have it up so house sparrows will have somewhere to go other than the main bluebird house. If they build in the main bluebird house, I'm going to at least remove the nest. I'll also try to trap them, but they can be hard to catch with that kind of trap, an in-the-house trap. So I'll at least remove the nest, and they will eventually give up on that house, the main house, and go to the bait house. And then once they're in the bait house, then I'll put more effort into trying to trap them. You should also consider trapping and dispatching the house sparrows. Now, you may not like that idea. You may even think it's mean. But again, if you think that, then I'd like to see you go check your bluebird house and find 5 baby bluebirds with their heads pecked in and a sparrow nest being built on top of it. You will remember that, and I tell you right now, you will not like house sparrows, and you will have no sympathy for them. So I suggest a repeating trap. If you want to actually put up a trap, I've got a repeating trap, and I bait it with white bread, because imagine house sparrows and European starlings, they will eat the white bread, whereas mostly your Native American birds won't touch the stuff. When you're feeding birds at McDonald's or whatever, feeding them your bread or French fries or something, chances are it's a house sparrow, maybe a starling. Now, there are some other birds that'll eat the stuff, but your bluebirds are not going to eat it. And so that's what I use. For repeating traps, just Google. I may make a video one day, but just Google the interweb, and for repeating, house sparrow trap, and you'll find plenty of information, as well as where places that sell them. They do work well. Also, there's the in-the-house traps. You can Google those as well. It's a lot harder to catch them with the in-the-house trap. I'll tell you that. I will give you a suggestion, though. If you do go with in-the-house trap and it closes on them and they're stuck in the house, how do you get them out? I highly suggest a plastic bag. I actually have clear plastic bags that I will put over the house, and that way, then when I start opening the opening of the house and the house sparrows fly out, they get caught in the plastic bag. That's it. And again, be responsible. And thanks for watching the video. And I hope it's helped you some with what to expect with the bluebirds. And please, if you're going to put up a bluebird house, make the effort to help your bluebirds. So bluebirding can be extremely rewarding. If you do it right, you will have success. And if thanks for watching this, because it shows that you do want to learn about it, and don't just watch this. Although hopefully this is useful. Read up, learn what you can about it, and it is some work, because you do have to deal with things like house sparrows, and but I assure you, that first successful clutch of bluebirds, it'll all be worthwhile. And with just a little bit of experience, you'll become a pro at this, and you'll have 2-3 clutches from a single house a summer, and it is very rewarding. So think about that when you if this video gets you a little too discouraged. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer if I can. But please, like, subscribe, comment if you found it helpful, and good luck with your bluebirds.